incredibly, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. You know, I said to you that I've worked really hard for all of my promotions, and everything that I've achieved in my life, I've worked really, really hard for, but none of that comes anywhere near, because I was a daily drinker for nearly 20 years and I was a high functioning alcoholic. So all of those glitzy, fancy jobs around the world, and after parties, and all of the shenanigans that were going on, there was a really dark side to that, which was essentially addiction. And the first year was incredibly, incredibly hard. I went into AA. I genuinely wanted to die. I didn't see a way forward at that point at all. And walking in through those doors of AA I was on my knees. It was like my last chance, I guess. And the first year, maybe even 2 years, were incredibly hard. And part of that is actually letting go. Part of that process is really letting go, because you have to let go of everything, old patterns, old friendships. So when you're saying to me now, like, how will I celebrate 5 years? My life is so different now to old me. A celebration like that would have been, or I won't even say, it would have gone on for days. It would have been, the whole suburb would have been involved at one point.
Well, you've died on the cross and you've been reborn. You went through your tomb and you come out. That's good.
Yes, that's it.
Can I ask though, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, when you say you're drinking every day, was that like a social drink, or did you start drinking by yourself, or what happened there?
It started off social drinking, and because I had a job that was,
kind of required.
When I was on magazines, I was entertainment editor, and then I went to the Daily Mirror, and literally then I was part of 3 a.m, which were the party girls, and I would be going out to 3 or 4 events in a night, 5 nights a week, sometimes 6 nights a week. There was always something going on, and it was work, and the lines were very blurred for me. And I also, as entertainment editor, and I ran I had a section in the mag where, I had a sex column, and I had another part where I'd talk about booze, and so I got sent all this stuff. So I was always legitimately had a glass of something on my desk, and it's just the lines between work really blurred for me. And then I think the worse my drinking got, the less I did it outside my own home, because I knew that it was very, very dark and broken at that point. And when you're at that point, when you're getting out of work, catching a cab home, deciding how many bottles of wine to take home with you, and that becomes like you're not the person who is shiny and sparkly and sociably drinking at that point. You've completely crossed a line, lost control of it, and it was immense. And ultimately I had to give everything away at that point. I resigned at the top of my career, gave everything away. I gave all my stuff away. People were laughing. I'd lived in Darlinghurst in Sydney, and I gave all my stuff to some charity shops in Potts Point. They were saying there'll be some really good looking, there'll be some really well dressed strippers around the cross with all my cast off clothes. I gave away my sofa, I gave away my TV, it was just like Christmas, gave away everything. And that was me hitting rock bottom.
It's a come to Jesus moment.
Exactly. The Phoenix.
The Phoenix, yeah. Well, I noticed on one of the Sky News segments I had a look at before you came on, you're talking about how politicians in particular don't really understand the mechanics of addiction. And it was in a segment about using the welfare card.
Yes.
How would you say the government needs to look at dealing with addiction that's different from what they do currently?
Oh, that's such a massive question, isn't it? It's a huge question. I think there's probably 2 things I'd say to that. Anyone with any brains can see that if you're approaching drugs as the war on drugs, then we've absolutely lost it.
Mm.
What we've got to start doing is understanding why there is such a huge wave of this. It's all wrapped, in my opinion, it's all wrapped up with the state of mental health. And you know, you look at America and you look at the opioid crisis over there, and you look at the amount that people are drinking and drugging or whatever. It all comes from the same place, and it all comes from a place of pain, where you're desperate to escape, and whatever your drug of choice is, it's all just that's just a gateway to getting out of your own head, out of your own life, and yeah, getting out of that. And so I guess that's my point about welfare cards. That the people who have a decent lifestyle and are sociably drinking, it's just not relevant to, you know, to this conversation. But there is a point where, to be really serious about turning your life around, if you're spending all your money on drink and drugs, which lots of people do, and it becomes a trap, and it's the cycle of addiction mixed in with the career choice of welfare, you're never, ever, ever going to break that cycle. If someone has a card that they cannot use, it's the first step to opening a door, sitting down and having a conversation with someone to start to address all of those challenges. But you don't just suddenly, you know, it really winds me up when politicians try to talk about this and they have no personal I think probably the only politician who has had personal experience with this would be Jackie Lambie, who obviously has gone through it, you know, with her son, and she's been very outspoken about that. But it is a huge, you know how I said, like family law, that's a huge rabbit hole to go down. Addiction is another huge rabbit hole, and nobody really wants to begin to tackle it. I'm actually now bringing it back to today. We're talking about isolation. I'm really, really concerned about what the next few months are going to do from a mental health point of view, a debt point of view, and then the domino effect that that has on mental health and addiction. And this all comes back to domestic violence again. Yes, there are some men who are the typical, stereotypical abuser, but there are lots of people in very dysfunctional relationships all across this country who are now going to be given money to buy booze or their substance of choice and literally be forced behind locked doors. I just think that there's so many strands of hell that this lockdown and the next few months have in store, and I don't think people have thought this through, that side of it.
Mm.